Hello, old chum. If you stick around, you will hear about the Batman. He's kind of a big deal. The Fantasmagorium is pleased to welcome you to Capes, Cowls, and Crusaders, a show about the Batman. And I know this is the only time I'm going to be able to do this, so I'm just going to take the intro time and read my favorite quote from the entire movie. One man is born a hero, his brother a coward. Babies starve, politicians grow fat, holy men are martyred, and junkies grow legion. Why? Why? Luck! Blind, stupid, simple, doodah, clueless luck. Kat is here. My name is Scotty R37. That was way too much fun. And today we celebrate Batman Forever. Hey, Kat.
Hey, I don't remember that quote from the movie, and I just watched it.
That's the very beginning with the security guard guy.
Oh, God, that guy. Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's wait. Hang on a second. We can start casting aspersions once we get into the plot, because yes, this is a little ridiculous.
A little.
And in fact, to the point, I don't have my physical copy of Batman Forever is arriving on Friday. So I did get to watch the movie today, but I don't. So you have your copy. Perfect. Is that a steelbook?
It is.
That's great. That's better than the movie.
And the disc art even looks really cool. It's got like the Batmobile inside, and it's like all green.
Cool. The Batmobile, ribbed for her pleasure this outing. And yeah, but that looks fantastic. I would also like to say hello to everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for showing up, guys. Bunyan Snipe, friend of the show, thank you so much. Tom Jr. Jackson, thank you for being here. Jill, of course, always a pleasure. Lemon, happiness pie to see you. And Edge of Time, ahoy. As things go on, I will do my best to keep up with the chat. Everyone knows that I get lost in the conversation with Kat, but I will do my best. And if we don't read it out immediately, we will be discussing. We're just going to get through the plot such as it is, some of the production troubles. Oh, there's a lot going on with this movie, Kat.
Yeah, so they initially started pre-production before Batman Returns came out, because it was just, to them, they thought it was a given they were going to do a third movie. And Burton was director, and Burton is the one who chose Schumacher as his producer. And then when Returns, it succeeded financially, it turned a profit, but once it didn't do what they thought it was going to do, it was critically, and fans kind of, they all kind of bashed on it. And then they lost, more importantly, their merchandising tie-ins. They fired Tim Burton, but then changed their minds and decided, well, we'll hire you back as producer instead. And then they promoted Schumacher to director, and Michael Keaton just quit in disgust. He's like, I'm done with this. Mm-hmm. And they'd already cast Rene Russo as Chase Meridian. And once Schumacher was there, he decided, well, if Keaton's not going to do it, we should get a younger actor. And he thought that Rene Russo would have been too old to play the lead. So then they kicked her out. And for whatever reason, I couldn't find a reason as to why they didn't want to pursue or bring back Billy D. Williams for Two-Face. I mean, why not? But instead they went with Tommy Lee Jones, and the script got hammed up quite a lot. According to Mark Bernardin from Fat Man Beyond, there's actually an alternate cut of this film sourced from 50 minutes of unseen footage, which had less of an emphasis on Robin, which I'm not crazy about, because I actually like the emphasis on Dick Grayson's story in this movie. I think it's one of the strong points of the film. And it also has more of Batman's visions of like Man-Bat and other things. It was less campy, and sure, the less camp stuff would have been nice, but who knows if they're ever they probably won't release that. But so yeah, some troubles with this one, but it did make more money, over 300 million something, so it did well.
Well, and apparently this is the only movie that Jim Carrey has been a part of that was the highest grossing movie of the year. I remember very distinctly seeing this at last day of high school for me in grade 11, I think. And so I do remember the hype around it. I remember going to see it, being excited by it, the music videos, which is a huge part. You got in some regards, the soundtrack is almost comparable with the success of the film when you got U2 and Seal and Flaming Lips and so many people contributing to that. I remember many a Toyota Tercel with the CD or the cassette for the soundtrack, and sort of bombing around that summer, listening to Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me.
when the song started playing in the end credits, I just turned it off. It wasn't for me.
I really well, and maybe it's the nostalgia, but I do recall liking "Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me" very much. Yeah, and
Was
there
that the first
was
song? Was that the first song that plays in the end credits?
yes.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't crazy about that one. So
Bounce down, but down, but down,
yeah,
bound. Yeah, I do. I do. And Bunyan Snipe says Ace Ventura. Yeah, he was in these Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, but never the highest grossing of any
my
particular year.
my favorite of Jim Carrey's over the top comedic roles was actually The Mask from
Yes.
'94. I really like that one. I didn't.
Yes.
I think I saw the original Ace Ventura maybe once or twice a long time ago, like decade. I don't really remember the story at all, but I saw the sequel and it was terrible. Um, and then Dumb and Dumber. It's been, oh God, probably 18 years since I've seen that. I don't know why. I should see it again. I think I liked it, but my favorite Jim Carrey movies are actually The Truman Show and Man on the Moon.
Truman Show was when I started to appreciate Jim Carrey more as an actor as opposed to just being a clown man.
Yeah, I thought he was really good in that movie. That was great.
But yeah, I'm sort of the same mind. I remember seeing The Mask, enjoying that, but that's also sort of because of the superhero slant on it. Ace Ventura, I saw, and it was for what it was. It was fine. It was goofy. It was my first introduction to Jim Carrey, and I remember also again in high school people going absolutely nuts for Ace Ventura when nature calls. And it's like, no, this is just a little too silly and off the wall for me. But I remember people howling around me, and I had to sit there and sort of, yes, this is somewhat amusing. But yeah, like with Joel Schumacher taking over. Oh, and there have been changes, as I mentioned, with the new Batmobile. A heck of a lot more neon, and most importantly, nipples on the bat suit.
I noticed him on Robin's suit. I didn't notice him on Batman's suit because I know the close up for the Batman suit with the bat nipples is in Batman and Robin, but I'm not sure if they were on it for his suit in Batman Forever. I know they had the close up for like the cod piece and the ass shots and stuff like that. And even Chris O'Donnell said in an interview a couple of years ago, he's like, I didn't really think about it until the media made such a big deal about it. But like Schumacher said, he was like all the Greek sculptures that you have throughout this new version of Gotham. He's like, Schumacher says, look, it's anatomically correct. So I just created costumes like that. But then Chris O'Donnell's like, yeah, considering Schumacher and the fact that he's gay and that they're doing these super close-ups and even going out of the way to put, he's like, yeah, it is kind of weird doing the nipples and stuff. And it's like, I guess, but I do think as silly as that is, it's something that gets mentioned too often because it's literally like one shot and that's it. There's plenty of other silly and ridiculous things in the film.
Oh yeah,
that are memorable.
Well, the only thing that I ever had in terms of pushback for myself, the pushback towards the nipples were when the promotional material came out for Batman and Robin. And they had Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl, and I was like, all right, nipples on the bat suit. And that never happened. I was ripped off and robbed. So, but yeah, no, it is something that, well, and I guess, what year is this?
Okay, if that's the case, then that's a clever denial for Schumacher to say, hey, it's anatomically correct, but for hers, we're going to do something different. That's kind of funny.
But there is a certain level of we can get into all of that when we talk about Batman and Robin next week, which I'm super excited for. But there is sort of a bustier situation going on over the bosoms of Batgirl, so that it isn't just her bat jumblies hanging out all over the place. And so I think there was a certain level of modesty. And again, sexuality is one of the reasons why Batman Returns got such flack.
Yeah. I do like that they kept Pat Hingle and Michael Goff for some semblance of continuity.
Yes. Well, and this is also interesting because we return to Alfred wanting to marry off Bruce Wayne again. It's very important. But yeah, we get Michael Goff, we get Pat Hingle, Chris O'Donnell as Robin, not the first choice for Robin, widely reported, and still Marlon Wayans was signed on for costume fittings for Batman Returns. There was in Sam Hamm's original script for the first Batman, there was supposed to be something that happened during a car chase, which results in the death of Dick Grayson's parents, but that was ultimately never filmed. It was storyboarded, but never filmed. I almost think that Marlon Wayans would have been a better choice. Joel Schumacher went in another direction, and then also with Harvey Dent went from Billy D. Williams to Tommy Lee Jones, and that's, I don't know, somewhat questionable because you had the two existing cast members who were black, and then you get to Batman Forever, obviously returned to the original interpretation of being Caucasian. I don't know. I don't want to call any names or speculate.
But you said the two original who were black. There was Billy D. Williams. Who was the other?
Well, Marlon Wayans, in terms of being on a pay-or-play contract.
But he didn't actually make the final cut of any of the films.
But in terms of having,
I can totally see him playing Robin for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that sort of stands out when he's introduced is, like, I was watching it this afternoon, and it was like, looks like Robin is the same age as his dad. Like,
yeah, kind of. Yeah, it was a little weird. But I noticed they also have comedian George Wallace as the mayor.
As the mayor, which is nice, although he has one line.
Yeah, he's like,
what do you want?
Oh, and he's like, oh, Batman, but he gets a couple shots, and Jon Favreau's actually in there for a cameo as like an assistant in the Wayne Enterprises.
That was today's was the first viewing. I was today years old when I saw that Happy Hogan was in the background of a Batman movie, and I was like, wait a second.
They had Bob Zamuda running the electronics store.
Mm-hmm. And and even the late Bob Kane. He's in the party scene when Batman descends upon Enigma Tech's unveiling of the box.
And Patrick Leahy, again, the senator, the Batman fanatic from Vermont, is there at the party scene. And but in a supporting role, I always forget she's in this movie. Drew Barrymore as Sugar, one of Two-Face's girls. Sugar, the angel, and Spice, like the bad dominatrix-y type side.
Debbie Mazar, absolutely. Yeah. Who I've always been a fan of from her 90s roles. I remember her most from Empire Records. But she was great in this. And originally they were supposed to be called Leather and Lace. But
that would have been funny.
But that's again, they were trying to avoid any of the same controversies that they had with.
But they designed Spice to look like a dominatrix.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. But again, it was toned down to a certain extent. And I don't even think that Debbie Mazar had any lines. It was mostly given to Drew Barrymore.
That's right. She didn't have any lines. And I also thought it was interesting that they didn't bring back Catwoman. It's like if they want to tone down the sex aspect, they can do that and still have her there, But that didn't happen either.
Well, and from what I understand, the original concept for it was going to be, and this is a terrible title, so I'm glad that that's not what it was. But when Tim Burton was on it, it was originally going to be called Batman Continues, which is kind of funny, especially considering sort of arcades at the time. Like that's the entire huge Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2. And once you lose a battle, it says continue. And it's like, okay, Batman Continues. It's like, I don't think that would have flown very well. But originally it was going to be just the Riddler. And then they were going to return with Catwoman as well, was going to be in it when it was the original interpretation with Tim Burton and Michael Keaton.
I wish they had done that. It would have been a much better movie.
Well, and it would have been a more cohesive trilogy, and then you can move on and make whatever you wanted after the fact. You could have gone on and made Batman and Robin, but that's what happens when McDonald's says Tim Burton is in, then McDonald's is out.
Wusses.
Yeah, well, and I
mean, newsflash, McDonald's, the villain in a movie is supposed to be evil and creepy. I don't get the controversy. Like, I read a old review today, Roger Ebert of Batman Forever. He's like, well, this one's funner and kids will be able to have more fun with it because as opposed to the other kids who are leaving Batman Returns bawling. I'm like, really? Like, bawling about what? It's like Batman saves the day from the Penguin. What's to cry about, you know?
Yeah, well, but also, and again, this is something that I sort of touched on last week, and possibly in the Batman Returns conversation that we had, is that still, while Batman 1989 was a cultural touchstone, like more of an event than an actual successful representation of Batman, Batman Returns still had to contest with the leftover side effects of the Adam West Batman. That was still in the popular zeitgeist, just based on the fact that once Batman came out, everywhere started rerunning the Batman 66. And then Batman Returns comes out. Basically, what everybody was expecting in the second one was something more along the lines of Biff Pow Zap, Batman Saves the Day. And it is a much darker, infanticide,
it seems to hew more towards the dark aspects of, like, the Frank Miller stuff in the 80s. It's a darker story.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And obviously, and as mentioned, as I think it was you, and many people have commented on it, it's more of a Tim Burton movie with Batman in it than it is a Batman movie directed by Tim Burton, where that's sort of how I felt about the first one.
Yeah.
But yeah, incredible impact for the box office that year. And also even the writers were taking their cues from, if not the television show, that was probably more Schumacher. When they wrote the script, it was lifting mostly from I think they said like 1940 to 1960 era of Batman, when it was Batman, basically from Batman and Robin up until the TV show is the era of the comic books that they took their influences from, to have Batman and Robin punching their way through the rogues gallery while also jumping from giant typewriters to dinosaurs and huge coins and whatnot. And I think that's more of what the studio wanted, and quite possibly, and apparent from the box office, that's what the audience wanted too.
Yeah, strange.
For sure.
Clearly the studio wants to sell more merchandise and doesn't want to lose the merchandising tie-ins, and they want to make more money, but like others have pointed out, the Two-Face character is kind of a Joker ripoff. He's not really Two-Face, and Riddler is just Jim Carrey doing his Jim Carrey shtick from Ace Ventura and The Mask. It's not really the Riddler. I mean, it's kind of the Riddler because Frank Gorshin is a bit over the top, but I found that, yes, the Riddler in this movie sends riddles to Bruce Wayne in the ultimate form of his compulsion, to clue him into his identity, but the rest of what he does really has nothing to do with riddles or puzzling or anything like that. He's kind of, he's not trying to unravel anything. He's not eliciting this huge mystery. He's kind of just a genius who has this evil plan that, like, he spells out what he wants to do with his box that looks nothing like a box.
Yeah. Well, and sort of trying to parse it together and figure it out, because it has been a long time since I've seen this. It's basically, as I've mentioned before, when I get box sets of Batman movies, I have Batman Returns, and then the other two usually are relegated to being given away, or they turn into coasters or whatever. And watching this again, in terms of the original cut, this is a weirdly stitched together movie that I agree. Like, I think that there should be some sort of original vision from, and unfortunately, Joel Schumacher's no longer with us, but it would be great to see the original order in which it happened, because it was supposed to start off with Two-Face escaping from Arkham, and then Bruce goes and tours the Wayne Enterprises facility, then gets called to the bank robbery, and then you get the Riddler killing his boss, and then it is stitched non-chronologically. It still works, but knowing that fact is like a splinter in my brain.
Yeah, the first hour of the movie doesn't really have a coherent plot. Like it opens with, the big bank heist, where you have that cartoonish security guard, and it's definitely holding back to Batman 66. Even the way they treat Two-Face, or the commissioner treats it like, oh, there's another supervillain on loose. Oh, it's Two-Face this time, just like Batman 66. Like, it's not a big deal. Oh, who's out tonight? No big
Mhm.
manhunt to catch him when he leaves. Just, oh, I guess he's gone. We'll get him another day type of thing. And the way that he takes the safe out, I thought was kind of neat. And when he's dangling it in the air and all the acid is spilling out, and I'm thinking, did they empty the safe? Because they're taking the safe, supposedly has all the money in there, but at the same time they're filling it with acid. So isn't that gonna eventually melt through, destroy everything? Maybe, maybe not. And in theory, while the way Batman puts the safe back is really clever, there's no way that one little line of cable would have done that, but it still looked pretty cool. And yeah, in 4K, some of the CG is clearly aged a bit, but Two-Face is just kind of he'll flip his coin, but he keeps flipping it. I noticed in this movie until it comes up, tails, which is not really what Two-Face. It's like that's kind of not really what Two-Face does. He doesn't just keep cheating that way, but he does that repeatedly throughout this movie till he gets what he wants. Even at the end of the movie, when you have the big moment where he catches the coin and it's face up, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter that it was face up because as we've seen earlier, like at Wayne Matt, he's just going to keep flipping the coin anyway, So it's like you have the element of it there, but it's not really that. But they didn't turn Two-Face into his own character like Burton did with the Penguin. Two-Face is kind of like this Joker-esque kind of, maniac. It's not really. It doesn't feel much like a character. I mean, even when they show you the flashback of what happened to him, I like on the one hand that it's not an extended, prolonged origin story, but they distract your attention from the TV screen to focus on Alfred asking Bruce a question it's like they're distracting you from this key piece of information that helps you at least understand what the hell's going on, and which I thought was kind of odd. It's like, okay, and the Riddler, I forgot that he doesn't show up till like halfway through the film, really, as the Riddler. Like he has that neat because you have the tour of Wayne Enterprises after the bank robbery, and Ed Beagley Jr. in the uncredited role as Fred, the boss. Telling Ed to shut up and sit down, and Bruce is like, no, it's okay. So Bruce listens to what he has to say, and Riddler's talking about this. It's really innovative, and Bruce is like, well, mind manipulation sounds kind of dangerous. I want to see your blueprints on this, though. And rather than just give it to him then, Edward's like, no, you're going to have to take this offer now. And it's not clear why he wants him to take it now instead of just waiting to the next day. But he just puts that ultimatum on the table, and Bruce is like, well, then it's going to have to be a no. And then his boss tells him off. And that night he tests the device on his boss, almost to spite him. He's already going to kill him, but he tests it on him anyway to show him, see, I did it. And then he kills him anyway by throwing him out the window, and he fakes it to look like a suicide thanks to the I guess the box, aside from mind manipulation, he's able to tamper with it to mess the security footage. And I love how the commissioner is, well, it looks like a suicide. Oh, look, here's the suicide note. And, Edward hands it over to the detective. He's like, oh, yeah, written in his handwriting, exactly on this day, you'll see. I'm like, yeah, that's not suspicious at all. And then when he hands the note to the commissioner, he looks at it, and it literally says, goodbye, cruel world. He's like, well, I guess this is a closed case. I'm like, oh, my God, you're so stupid.
Well, it's on the letterhead, and it's like, to who it may concern.
Exactly. And I'm like, I've always found the Pat Hangle-Gordon to be very aloof and not all there. But, okay, it is what it is. So Bruce goes home. And having met Chase Meridian at the bank robbery, she kind of wants to meet with him, and he decides to schedule an appointment with her, which seems kind of out of the blue. Like it's like, okay, you're gonna go meet her, and she gives him like that doll about the dichotomy. It's gonna help you out type of thing. But she's also got a crush on Batman and uses the bat signal to draw him out. And he's like, the bat signal isn't a toy. I guess she's just kind of attracted to Batman because, oh, he's cool, he flies, he's hot, whatever. Yeah, there's not at the same time there's not really much there because she only has to go on like one date with Bruce afterwards for her to decide to break it off with Batman.
No, they hang out a bit. Like and that was something that I was curious about going into this one again. Oh, also before we move any further, this is the movie that made me fall in love with Nicole Kidman because she is absolutely gorgeous and stunning in every scene that she's in. And she's also thirsty for Batman in a big bad way, just oozing sexuality, but in a more traditional way than, skin tight vinyl and a whip. But I think Bruce does go with the riddles to say, can you give a psychological impression of the person who sent these?
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so you got it's like the riddle's there, and he solves it really quickly. Oh, okay, the clock's on it's a clock kind of thing. It's like, oh, what's this about? So, and then he gets the other riddle, which Nigma kind of tapes to the gate at Wayne at his house, and he the second riddle is a I can't remember what the second riddle was, but he's stringing him along, and Bruce doesn't really know who the Riddler is. He doesn't really know if this is something he needs to be concerned about. It's like, okay, some wacko sending me this. What is it? Yeah, because Enigma during this whole time is just kind of at his apartment, which is shown to have an obsession with Bruce Wayne. It's a really neat kind of narrow, dinky, dark apartment, and he's got all these posters and pictures of Bruce. He's got all these weird gizmos. He's even built this like almost like a telephone box that has a mock-up of himself in the Riddler outfit. It goes yes, no, and so he's kind of he's nuts. But the movie isn't really focused on that. It's kind of focused on, they have like a random action scene with Two-Face that doesn't move the story forward at all. Bruce goes on a date with Chase Meridian to the circus, and that's where Two-Face shows up, and he's like, Batman better reveal himself in 2 minutes or I'm going to kill everybody. Bruce stands up and declares that he's Batman, but everybody's panicking and screaming, so no one hears him. He goes up the ladder to try and attack some of Two-Face's thugs. Then Robin and his family decide that, oh, we're going to intervene and try and save the day. Robin steals the bomb, takes it to safety, throwing it off the roof, but his parents get killed because they had been in the process of doing the stunt with what they call it, the death swing or something, without the net, and so they fall to their deaths. And Two-Face, makes a getaway. And in a way, Robin is not just blaming Two-Face; he's also blaming Batman for not showing up or whatever. And the next scene I didn't understand. So the next morning, Commissioner Gordon drives Robin to the house, and he's like, there's no one really to care for him, blah, 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 and social service. I'm like, how young is this guy? Because he's clearly in his 20s. Like, you don't need to be, what do you mean no one's around to take care of? Like, what are you doing exactly? Why are you driving him to Bruce Wayne's house? Because he makes it, the commissioner makes it, the way he phrases it, he makes it sound like, oh, he's your problem now type of thing. I'm like, wait, what? This is kind of odd. Like, he's not a teenager.
Well, and okay, so apparently, according to the character description, he's supposed to be between 15 to 18. Chris O'Donnell was 25 at the time of filming.
Yeah, he didn't. That is the worst. I mean, I know that they cast 20-somethings to play high school students, but they get away with it in high school movies because everybody's the same age, so they kind of just go with it. But and they don't have plot points about that with the parent. But the fact they have a specific plot point that this kid needs help, it's like, nothing about this screams 15, 16, 17-year-old, and so no sooner than the commissioner drives off. I mean, Dick's kind of no pun intended, didn't even mean to make a pun, but he's like, yeah, he's kind of a dick about it when he says, yeah, thanks, no thanks, I don't need your charity, fuck off kind of thing. He leaves, and then Bruce admires his motorcycle, and he's like, what, you hang out at motorcycle clubs, Bruce? And I was like, oh, jeez. He's like, oh, it's almost out of gas, there's no gas stations around here, so he takes him to the garage. He's like, oh, is this a garage or your car museum? And then he sees all the motorcycles, and he starts admiring them and the older models, and Bruce is like, yeah, Alfred used to be really good at working on them, but he can't really anymore. If you could be working on them or something, I could pay you by giving you one of the bikes. Of course, he doesn't use the word you, but it's obvious what he's doing. And then, of course, Alfred comes in with a tray with what looks like a cheeseburger and like a steak or something. He's like, oh, I guess I'll just throw this out. And I'm like, oh, God, simple bribery. How great that is. So Robin.
One also, it does drive the point home a little bit of how young he is, because it's a burger with a glass of milk.
Right. Yeah. It's like they're trying to sell him as being that young, but he looks a lot older, especially with the crowds that he hangs out with. It's just like, okay, so they go back into the Batcave. Bruce leaves, and they have he goes back to one of his dates with Chase Meridian, trying to get her to help him out with the riddle. Dick Grayson is still thinking about Two-Face. Then you have a random scene where Dick asks Alfred, what's in that side room? And he's like, it's where Bruce keeps all his dead wives, which I like that joke. And he's like, it's where we keep the silver. And so Robin goes to hide upstairs, and he waits until Alfred shouts to him. He's like, where are you? Oh, I'm just up here. He's like, just checking. And then he does this neat acrobatic bit to get to the door before it shuts. And he slides through the door, knocking it open, slides between the rotating silver shelf, knocking all the silver over, tumbling down into the Batcave. And now Alfred's got another problem on his hands because you let Vicky Vale in the Batcave, and now oops, here comes Dick Grayson. And not only did he let him into the Batcave, he doesn't stop him from stealing the Batmobile and taking it joyriding, which I thought was actually kind of cool. And he takes it down to I guess it's like the Gotham seedy underground, where you have people who I wouldn't think would spend that amount of time to have that detailed level of makeup and glow in the dark make all this kind of stuff, and they're like dancing around doing this stupid stuff. There's a group of them harassing a girl, and when everybody thinks Batman showed up, and when the doors open and they see that it's this kid, nobody's really concerned about it. But then when he sees the girl's in trouble, he runs over there, he saves her, and she's like, "Hey, wait a minute, don't I get a kiss from Batman?" I'm like, "Oh my God, he didn't actually say that." And then he kisses her anyway. Quickly finds himself in hot water. Batman arrives, the actual Batman arrives to save him. And then Robin immediately starts beating on him, saying, "It should have been you. You were supposed to be there. You should have been in it, blah, blah, blah." And he takes him back to the Batcave. He's like, "I need your help. I got to, kill Two-Face." And Bruce gives him the typical anti-revenge speech, basically referring to himself. And he's like, "You don't know what it's like. Your parents weren't killed by a maniac." He's like, "Yes, they were," which is, being a bit more continuity with Batman 89, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And Bruce doesn't really want a partner, and it's at this moment that he arbitrarily decides that, I'm just going to stop being Batman then. And he just, I'm going to stop being Batman. I'm going to date Chase Meridian because I've convinced her that she needs to break up with Batman, which is funny because he goes to her house as Batman on the balcony, and she kind of says, "I found somebody else," or whatnot, and he turns around and he smiles. And it's like, okay, so you as Bruce Wayne get to date your psychiatrist, okay, and now you're just going to quit being Batman because reasons, and not as well done as, say, when Spider-Man decides, I'm Spider-Man no more in Spider-Man 2. It just he just kind of stops. It's like, dude, that Robin is still vengeful. That's not going to change his mind about it. Like Alfred says, when Bruce accuses him of encouraging Robin, he's like, young men with desires of vengeance don't need encouragement. They need guidance. Mm-hmm. So I always thought that plot point just kind of, like a lot of plot points in this movie, just kind of comes out of nowhere. Oh, I'm done being Batman now. It's like, really?
Well, I think it comes down to the way that it was originally written, and there's a whole idea as to whether or not it was going to be. It was originally supposed to be a script about fear, loss, and acceptance, or something along those lines. And so when he witnesses the Flying Graysons die, which sort of triggers his repressed memories of the night that his parents' funeral was. And he was supposed to be grappling with the idea that him taking revenge for his parents' death had become so consuming that he's almost forgotten why he was doing it in the first place. And that's sort of the speech that he gives to Dick, in that he's like, and then you finally kill the monster, the person who did all of this, and then you find another face, and then another face, and then pretty soon it consumes you to the point that you don't even know why you're doing it anymore. And with him exploring his repressed memory, I'm giving this movie a hell of a lot more credit than it deserves.
Well, I think that's kind of what, like you said, that's kind of what that was the intention of the Chase Meridian character to begin with. She was going to help evoke all of that, and then that whole storyline just kind of ended up a garbled mess because they left that all on the cutting room floor.
A garbled mess is a good way to put it.
It just didn't, because I didn't feel that her character really ended up providing much other than from story point when Bruce takes the riddle to her house, or to her house to try and solve it. But it doesn't really do much else, and I didn't feel like she contributed much to change his mind about being Batman, which doesn't last long anyway, because then you have the random action scene where Bruce goes out, or Batman goes out and chases down Two-Face's thugs or whatever, and they almost repeat the gag with the old lady pushing the baby cart from Batman Returns, but this time it's Two-Face firing him and failing to stop him again, and Robin ends up kind of saving him. Batman's all upset about that, and finally we get back to the Riddler, where it's like we're nearly an hour into the movie, like 53 minutes I think it is, where he finally shows up at Two-Face's hideout, and he's admiring it and doing his whole Jim Carrey shtick and impressing Sugar and Spice. And he's like, "Oh, I can help you kill Batman, and I could do a much better job of this as you are, and we can put my box at everybody's house and we'll all make money," and all that kind of stuff. And Two-Face is like, "Well, or I could just flip a coin and just kill you right now. And that's one time he flips the coin and we don't see the result. So I guess he just decides to. That's the one instance of the movie where he actually obeys the coin, saying "Don't kill him." And that's another thing is that I almost said shopping spree. They go on a robbery spree,
Right.
stealing jewels and all of this kind of stuff that feels very classic Batman 66 type stuff. And they use it presumably to bankroll Nigma's island base, where he's got the headquarters of the box. And he's given a big speech as Nigma that he's starting his own company. He's going to have a box in everybody's house, and everybody loves it. And you see a news report about it showing everybody turning into zombies. And they're like, "Oh, Nigma, the critics say you're just like, this box turns people into zombies." Like, that's what they said about television. And so you have that going on. The benefit, of course, that Two-Face and Riddler get is that they get things like, bank statements, credit card numbers, find out all your evil secrets, so they can technically rule the world with this information. As you will tell Batman later in the movie, if knowledge is power, then I'm a god.
Yeah.
Or a god am I, which is kind of neat. And I actually wish they kind of pursued that idea to a more an effective evil plan. It's like, you got the information, now what are you going to do with it? It's because they set up this whole thing with the bottom. Like, that's kind of neat because you kind of suspend your disbelief that, okay, he has this device that lets him do that. Okay, granted. But let's see him do something with it. And he never really does, because he's smart in that he wants to get Bruce Wayne in there specifically because he's obsessed with him. But he hasn't put two to two together yet, thinking that he might be Batman. So at one of his galas, he invites Bruce there, and Bruce brings Chase as his date. And I thought it was funny when Sugar is standing next to Edward, it's like, why can't you look that hot? And he's like, oh, it's like, how's my mole? And so
completely emulated Bruce Wayne. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're introducing each other, and she's like, oh, you can call me anything you want, sir. I'm like, okay. So they trick Bruce into getting into the box, and Sugar, who removed the battery, so to speak, slides it back in once he goes inside the box and downloads whatever he's seeing onto it. But then before they can find out what that is, Two-Face shows up and crashes the party, and Edward's like, what are you doing? You're ruining my big night. We could have planned this out and sold the movie rights. And he's like, and Two-Face is being, in a sense, very calm about it. Nothing to worry about, just your old-fashioned low-tech robbery. Just, cash, jewelry, that kind of stuff.
Cellular telephones.
And on the one hand, Bruce escapes to go down to the car and tells Alfred, emergency, Alfred, and he gets into the back car to change. And a few minutes later, Robin comes down. And he's like, emergency, Alfred, and Alfred pops the trunk and gets the suit out for him. He's like, man, at this rate, I might be reemployed at Buckingham Palace. And so they go back in. You have a big action scene. Batman's captured. Two-Face is gonna blow him up into smithereens, and he does this neat trick with his cape where he kind of folds it around himself and he presses a button, and it almost looks like the effects like molten something or whatever, and it kind of protects him from the fire. I wasn't really clear what it's doing.
I always thought it was some sort of, like, it emitted some kind of liquid, because when he gets out of the fireball, he's sort of dripping. Maybe it was sweat, but I always thought that it put like some sort of flame retardant liquid around the cape.
Right, because he is dripping in that first shot, and then the next close up he's like dry again, and so Robin comes to save him. They go home, and back at the Riddler's hideout, the Riddler, Two-Face is all upset that his master plan failed, and Riddler pulls out this. And he's like, want to see what's on Bruce Wayne's mind? He's like, okay. So they pop it in, and he sees it's a bat, and they're both very surprised and happy about that. And then Riddler's like, it's okay, you could say it. And Two-Face is like, you're a genius. And so on Halloween night, while Bruce and Chase are having a date at Wayne Manor, Riddler and Two-Face show up pretending to be trick-or-treaters. They attack Alfred. They ransack the Batcave, blowing it to smithereens. They kidnap Dr. Meridian, knock Bruce unconscious. And in a moment that almost seemed out of character, because again, this is the scene where Two-Face keeps flipping the coin until it gives him the answer he wants. But he lets Riddler easily talk him out of killing Bruce by saying, if we kill him, we won't learn anything. I'm like, what does Two-Face care about that? But apparently he does. And he puts the gun back in his pocket and leaves.
Yeah. Well, and two things with that. No pun intended. The one, and the biggest one that was always a complaint, and I've heard this over the years, is that he keeps flipping to try and get the "can I kill people" response. I thought he was addressing each point throughout the fight individually to be like, no, that's worth it. Damn it. And then it's like, and then he knocks out another bad guy or like another one of his henchmen And he's like, yeah, all right, let's try again. I always thought it was a case by case sort of situation, as opposed to I just want to be able to kill him. He is overly excited when he does get to shoot him, and it just wings him off the side of the head. But yeah, it is uncharacteristic. But then again, Two-Face does address it at the end, and he says, no more riddles, no more puzzles, no nothing, just good old-fashioned, you dead.
Which he follows back on with the coin. But
Which, yeah.
And so Bruce wakes up, and there's a new riddle there. It says you can find, we're 5 items in everyday sort. You'll find us all in a tennis court. And they figure out that it's vowels. And Alfred's like, oh, that's kind of clever. And so they start working it out, saying, well, all the riddles had numbers in it. They put the numbers together. And they're like, are they letters in the alphabet? No. If you put the numbers together, they're letters. Ah, Mr. E. A mystery. What's another word? Enigma. Edward Enigma. It's like, okay, you got it. So he goes back to the Batcave, takes off. Commissioner Gordon sees that the bat signal. I'm not sure if he turned the bat signal on he turned the bat signal on, but then the Riddler projects his green question mark, turns it into a big question mark, and then of course you have Batman fly through with the bat plane, whereas Robin, by the way, Batman's finally accepted him as his partner, takes off in the Batboat, and Gordon's standing and cheering, "Yay, Batman!" coming to say, and I'm thinking, you do realize that these two guys don't have superpowers. They're just, I mean, Two-Face and Riddler, that is. He could call the military, the SWAT, whatever, to deal with this problem. Like, and the city isn't in any immediate danger of any kind, because they're just, Riddler and Two-Face are just hanging out of the house. Like, and Gordon is so worried about everything, and it's like, yeah, Batman 66 vibes. So they show up.
When he's on top of of police headquarters, and he's like, "Yay, Batman's here!" and I was like, "Where do you even have a rest of the police force? Like, exactly. You just go, you turn it on, and you're like, well, Batman's not here. I guess crime runs rampant this eve."
Exactly, and you have Two-Face and Riddler playing like a game of Battleship to set off these sea mines to destroy the Batboat. And he uses, like, apparently the box can also be used as a laser, and it blows up the Batplane. And these scuba divers come out to capture Robin, but then Batman uses his escape pod. It's kind of neat that the Batplane has an escape pod to become a submarine, sort of like how the Tumbler has an escape pod to become the Batpod.
Right.
And so the submarine fires a net. And at first I thought, is he going to let all these scuba divers just drown in the net underwater? But now he saves them by bringing them up to the buoy and taking them there. So they start climbing up onto the lighthouse, or the rocky island, and Robin's like, "Holy rusted metal, Batman!" And I like how Batman actually stops. He's like, "What?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "This is rock. This is all metal, and it's full of holes." And Batman's like, "Oh." Which was still kind of funny. It's like, rather than telling, like, with everything else in this movie being so Batman 66, you think they would just have Batman go with it instead of actually stopping and going, "Huh?"
Yeah. That would have been awesome if Val Kilmer was like, "That's right, old chum."
Exactly. But then the island starts, like, rising up into the air. Batman goes inside one of the side door that you turn a question mark to open it, and it gets locked back in, and he has to climb up this high ladder to get up into the main lair. And Robin, meanwhile, decides to keep climbing up the fake rocks, and Two-Face shows up, and he fights him, and he's like, "This is for my father," headbutts him, and "This is for my mother," punches him, and "This is my brother," and "This is for me." And then Two-Face feigns defeat. He's like, "Oh, you didn't! Oh, what a world!" That kind of crap. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "May as well end it all." And Robin's like, "Yeah, I could, but I'd rather see you in jail." Which I admit, because throughout the movie he's talking about how he wants to kill Two-Face and he wants revenge and all that. And like he told Batman before they took off, "I can't promise I won't kill Harvey," but I kind of wish Batman was there for that moment when he decides that he doesn't want to kill him. And it did seem to kind of come out of left field because he's so vengeful, so murder, and then all of a sudden he just isn't. And it's like, oh, okay, you finally got through to him. But it did I thought it would have been better if Batman was there to actually see that, given what happens later in the movie.
Or even just to see the bat signal off in the distance and be like, I'd rather serve justice. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so Two-Face then pulls his gun and he's like, "Noble but stupid boy." So Batman or Robin and Chase are tied up inside these two tubes that are dangling over the pit with all the the water and the spikes and all that. And Batman gets up into the Riddler's main hub, and that's
holding both of them and saying, "Some villain will come and ask you to make a sadistic choice."
and he's playing it, styling it like a game, like The Price is Right or something, when you get a bid on one item or the other. And he describes his evil plan that, we're going to be able to basically rule the world because knowledge is power and I'm a god and that kind of stuff. And then Batman's like, well, wait, I have a riddle for you. And by the way, I should have mentioned, Riddler's costume keeps changing throughout the movie. It goes from like classic Riddler costume to the blinking highlighted costume, which I actually saw at a museum 12 years ago.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And then it changes to this white like leotard with silver sparklies all over it, green, and he goes from like
crazy hair,
scraggly red hair in the beginning to gets coiffed brown hair, and now this insane red type of hair with almost like Happy New Year type sparkly glasses, but one looks like a question mark.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got the big question mark cane, and Batman's like, well, I have a riddle for you. And he's like, oh, for me, really? Ooh, like, do tell. And Two-Face is kind of standing there cross-armed and upset because he's kind of done with this crap. And so Batman says the riddle. He's like, well, I see nothing yet everything. And it's bad. What am I? And he's like, oh, that's easy. You're as blind as a bat, of course. And he's like, exactly. And he throws the batarang, blowing up the main like chamber, which shoots all the information
mind
into Riddler's
control
head.
stuff. Yeah.
It causes a blackout and all this strobe lighting effect. Riddler's head starts morphing crazily because he's taking too much of it at once. But he's able to press the button on his question mark pole, dropping Chase and Robin. And contrary to what Riddler said, Batman was able to save both of them, diving with the batarangs. But since he's neutralized the villains, they can't cut any of the lines. So he saves Robin and Chase. They get back up onto the scaffolding, and Two-Face is there, and that's when he says, no more riddles, no more puzzles, no more of this crap, you're just dead. And then Batman's like, aren't you forgetting something? Your coin. And then he turns into Harvey Dent for one of the first times in the whole movie, because we never really get to see him barely as Harvey Dent in this movie. And he's like, yes, Bruce, I'm forgetting emotion is the enemy of justice. Thank you, you've always been a dear friend. And he gets out his coin, he flips it, and then Batman just throws a ton of coins up there. He can't find which one is his. He panics, loses his footing, and falls to his death. And Robin is watching. And it's like he's realizing in that moment that, I mean, he already decided he wanted to take him to jail, but now he knows for certain that Bruce is right. Revenge doesn't really do anything. But again, it would have been nice if Batman had seen that moment, so he knows that the reason he's upset isn't because he didn't get to kill him, but because he got killed at all.
Mm-hmm.
So Two-Face dies, and just like the homage in The Dark Knight, he ends up catching the coin lands, and you see that its head's up. Then Batman then goes back up into the Riddler's upper chamber, and somehow this mind morphing thing has distorted his head. Like half of his head looks like it's peeling off, and all mutated, and his costume's all ripped, and he looks all like weird. And for some reason, it's not clear why, but all of a sudden Riddler kind of visions him as an actual bat, and he's terrified of that. We then cut to Arkham Asylum, and I like that juxtaposition where he was initially on top of the world, had absolutely everything in his power, and now Arkham Asylum with the red light and the angle on it. And his psychiatrist is called Chase Meridian there, saying, Riddler's been going on for hours. Edward's been going on for hours that he knows the identity of Batman, and why he couldn't just ask himself. Did he say, I'm not going to tell anybody but Chase Meridian? I don't know. Okay, so she looks through the bars, and she's like, Edward. He's like, huh? Edward. He's like, you know who Batman is? He's like, yes, it's me. And he's dressed in classic black and white striped jail suit, but his hands are like really inside, so the sleeves are long and dangly, and he's wrapped more around his head. Yeah, like wrapped more around his head like a straitjacket. And his eyes almost look kind of like they're still like swollen or something. They look a bit red under the light. And he flaps around. And he's like, ah. So apparently he doesn't know who Batman is anymore. Alfred and Batman are waiting outside, and she comes out. She's like, don't worry, your identity is safe. And they kind of make up, and Alfred smiles as he thinks that maybe Bruce will be able to keep his girlfriend, even though he won't. Back at the Batcave, it's alluded that because he finally has a partner, you have Batman and Robin now as partners in this,
Oh, and then you do the run.
Yeah,
the run at the camera.
Solo. And that is Batman forever.
Yes. I did want to point out that the warden of Arkham Asylum, or the doctor at Arkham Asylum, is Dr. Burton, named after Tim Burton, and played by Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Odo, Rene Auberjonois.
Yes. So this movie does definitely have a lot of homages to Batman 66. Definitely feels like it's in that vein. Like I said, Two-Face seems like a bit of Joker-esque, not as much like Two-Face, even though
No.
some of the signage is there. Riddler is, on the one hand, it's Jim Carrey leaning into his classic Jim Carrey bit, but there are bits of Frank Gorshin in there because I just find that Frank Gorshin's character is more riddle focused than Jim Carrey's was, because the only time you really get the riddles is when he's sending him to Bruce. It's not so much like he's just blatantly reading people's minds. He's not turning that into riddles or puzzles, and he had his like master plan from the beginning. It's like, okay, and they introduced him rather late, which is interesting because Riddler is treated with an actual complete story, like a beginning, a whole character arc there. Whereas Two-Face is just kind of there and treated in the tradition of Batman 66. He's just, oh, there's another supervillain Batman. We have to stop him, and that kind of thing. And so
here's a 10-second recap of where he came from, and it's not important anymore.
Yeah, and it just kind of, and like I said, you never really get the Harvey Dent side of him until that moment at the end of the movie. And so it's just kind of, I mean, it's a good performance in terms of, you can tell Tommy Lee Jones is totally eating up, hamming it up. But I was never crazy about that character, other than the fact that I think it's neat that they got Tommy Lee Jones to play him. Yes. And like we mentioned earlier, the Chase Meridian story and all the stuff that this movie was supposed to be should have been put back in the movie. But I would put it back in the movie while still keeping an emphasis on Robin, because this is actually the only live action version of Dick Grayson's origin story that we've ever had.
That's
at
true.
least, I mean, I haven't watched the Titans series, so I'm not sure if they cover. Is he even in that series? I don't know.
Steve would know. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, but it's like, this is like really, and I didn't hate Robin as a character. I kind of liked him as Chris O'Donnell. I think, okay, this is kind of there. I mean, the idea that he's a teenager is really contrived, but that aspect worked for me. But Val Kilmer, I gotta say, I'm not a fan of him as Bruce Wayne. He seems kind of stiff and almost like he's reading lines off a page. Like, it didn't, like, especially in what should be the more tense scenes where he's talking to Robin in the Batcave, and Robin's all like, you have to help me kill Two-Face and blah, blah, blah. And he's saying these banal blasting like, revenge, you're just going to feel bad. You're going to become like me. And it's like, I don't know. It just didn't feel I think Michael Keaton was a bit more, it felt more real as Bruce Wayne. Like here, Kilmer just throughout the movie feels a bit, again, I've never been able to find the right word for it, but I was not really crazy about it.
Well, there was one moment that I really felt like it was Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, because it was after Dick had rescued Bruce, and he's like, face it, we're going to be partners. What do you want to call me? Batboy, Nightwing, what do we got? And then he's like, no, we're not working together. And he's like, what are you going to do? Stop me? And then when Val Kilmer stands up and he's like, I can stop you. And I was like, damn, that was the one moment where I was like, okay, I buy you. I buy you as Bruce Wayne Batman. But there's a lot, like, because it's going, even Joel Schumacher wanted to do more of a dark psychological take on it. Like up until this point, like there are things like I think he first worked with Tommy Lee Jones in The Client. Like he was a much more serious filmmaker. He did Flatliners and The Lost Boys, which were not, I would say, okay, good choice to direct this going into Batman Forever, and then seeing Batman Forever and being like, wow, what did they do? And I think
that's why I wonder how much of that was the studio maybe meddling and making all the cuts and changes after the finish, even though Schumacher did come back for another one.
Well, and I would say that this is the one where he sort of gets pulled into the franchise or the machine that is Batman. And he's like, okay, we're going to make a Batman. And he's a Batman fan as opposed to Tim Burton. Like he liked Batman and he kind of wanted to get into Year One and things like that. Like that whole thing with Man-Bat and the psychological trauma of overcoming not only the death of his parents, but the bat symbolism of fear. And they were like, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. Switch this around. We need more. It has to be colorful. We want to sell Happy Meals and stuff like that. And when we do get to Batman and Robin, and this is something well known from the special features on Batman and Robin, is he basically coined the phrase toyetic in terms of it being the reason we're making this movie is for merchandising and Happy Meals. That's what this is for. So let's do it. We're making a cartoon, people. But
and wasn't
in this one, I think he started off with an idea and was like, well, they're paying the bills, so I'll do what they want.
I can't remember. Was it this movie or Batman and Robin where they commissioned H.R. Giger to design the Batmobile, and they didn't end up using his design? because in the spirit of it being darker and Schumacher wanting it to be darker, that would make sense. His design almost looked kind of like the letter X, like coming around with a little pod in the middle, and it had the tires under the different X points. It was a little weird looking because it's Giger, and I could see why they didn't pick it. I don't think I would have picked it either, but it seems like I think it was probably for this movie because the final Batmobile they went with sort of homages it. Like you have the rib cage. It looks almost like a like a creature. I kind of like this Batmobile more than the one in the Burton films.
Oh, I like the Burton one better. The Burton one looks sleeker, but this one, I agree. It had like sort of that ribbing on the outside. That's why I said at the beginning.
I think they might have improved on it again in Batman and Robin. Actually, I can check right now because I got it right here. It shows it.
But you get to see the turbine spinning in the in the Batmobile in Batman Forever. I don't know if that works. I found the Batman and Robin Batmobile looks too flimsy in my opinion. Like this one looks flimsy. Yeah,
it does kind of bounce a bit. It doesn't stick together as it should, but the design of it when it's just sitting there parked is like, oh wow, that looks really
for sure. Yeah. No, but I like the Batmobile when it drives around in Batman and Batman Returns, and I like the Batmobile in this one when it has the single fin. But when Robin takes it out for the joyride, that single fin on the back splits open and it kind of jiggles, and I'm like, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, it just kind of.
That's also one of the problems that I have at the very end of the movie where they're running towards like in front of the bat signal and they're coming and it's like Batman's ears or horns or whatever. They're kind of shaking. And I'm like, that's kind of, that looks a little Fisher Price for me. But it's just weird. Like this one doesn't feel cohesive, but I like the parts. I just wish they had put them together in the right order.
Yeah, I could have done without the camp, but I do like the Robin story.
Did you like Robin doing laundry? Was that the best part of the movie?
That was it seems like that stuff is there because they're trying to build on his relationship with Alfred because that's his in. Because not only is Alfred trying to marry off Bruce, you could tell that Alfred is encouraging the idea of this kid becoming his partner once he gets into the Batcave.
Yeah.
And so that's there, and I like that. I would have liked it if they retained the Chase Meridian stuff, and if Riddler had a bit more of a mystery type element. Because Riddler always, in every story he's in, is an element of mystery as to what's going on. But this one was pretty straightforward. It's like he has an obsession, and the two things never really merge. It's like on the one hand, he has this obsession with Bruce Wayne, like this unhealthy stalker-esque obsession of living up to him. But then once he resigns and starts the box, he's doing this completely different thing and is seemingly able to reel in his obsession until Bruce shows up at the party. And that's when he puts him back in there. And it's like, okay, you're going on this power trip to be, the master of all things, but that doesn't really have anything to do with your obsession with Bruce Wayne. And you're sending Bruce these riddles because he was sending him the riddles before he found out he was Batman. So It's like, what did he hope that he would find out? Because it's like, did he want Bruce Wayne to figure out that the Riddler, the same Riddler committing all these crimes was Nigma? I mean,
again, I think I'm giving it far too much credit, and maybe I'm reading into it more than I should, simply because I kind of want it to be good. But at the beginning, when Nigma is told that Bruce won't fund the brain manipulation, he says there's just too many questions. And that's what drives Nigma over into too many questions. Too many questions. Well, fine, I'll ask you all the questions, and I'm going to learn all the answers before you. And it kind of feeds into the Riddler wanting to be the intellectual superior. But whereas in the comic, it was to be the intellectual superior of the world's greatest detective in Batman, in this one, the motivation is to be intellectually superior to Bruce Wayne. And then he even says at the gala, he's like, you're being outfoxed, basically outdone by me. How does it feel? And Bruce is fairly, timid about it. He's just like, congratulations on all your success, Alfred. But it's like, this is kind of interesting to me because the Riddler is created by Bruce Wayne, not Batman. And then when he finds out Batman is Bruce Wayne, it's like all the better.
Yeah, I wish they pushed that more as well. Because, again, the Riddler doesn't really come center stage until the second half of the movie.
True.
Which is why I thought it was interesting that I get that Two-Face was going to be in it if Burton had done it. But once it seems that Burton left, that Two-Face didn't really have much of a purpose other than other than being there as a plot device for Robin's origin story.
Yeah, which is
So,
much more Jason Todd than it is Dick Grayson.
yeah.
So do you how many batarangs you got kicking for this bad boy?
Maybe
I will remind you, you gave Batman 66 a 3.
I'll give this a 5 batarangs.
I am also no, I gave 66 a 6. I'm gonna downgrade my 6 to a 5 and give this one a 6.
All right.
Simply because it is an updating of 66, and I wouldn't feel right giving this movie a 7.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm certainly not going to rate it on par or lower than Batman 66. And one more thing I wanted to ask you before we get to the chat. Is part of the reason why they rearranged things, because there was some confusion as to whether or not this was going to be a reboot, whether or not this was going to be sort of like a James Bond situation where they recast the actor, but nothing that has happened before matters. Do you think that part of the reason why it is Batman heavy at the beginning of the movie is so that you get used to Val Kilmer as Batman before you see him as Bruce Wayne? Whereas in the original organization of the movie, you would have seen Val Kilmer first as Bruce Wayne. And it's like, but that's a different guy.
That might have been it, as well as the fact that they wanted this movie to be fun. Like, I remember reading about pre-production information for Batman Returns, and they were under the impression that for some reason they thought that movie was going to be a lot more fun, as if to say Batman 89 wasn't, even though Batman 89 was very successful. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, because I think that at the time they were thinking, oh, Danny DeVito, he's funny, it's going to be great, and that kind of thing. And Catwoman, she's popular, Michelle Pfeiffer is great. Oh yeah, it's going to be great. Oh, Christopher Walken, he's really hot. Oh, cool. And then it wasn't a fun movie. I mean, it was for me, but when it wasn't fun, I think maybe that's why they have, like, again, there's a whole lengthy superfluous action scene where Batman just goes off to chase Two-Face, and this extended chase to the Batmobile that's just there. It doesn't move the story forward at all. It's just there for the sake of action. Yeah. And they just, I think they just wanted it to up the fun factor, which is why they open with the bank heist, almost kind of like a Bond movie where you open with a big action, some type of an action beat like that, rather than focusing on telling a more cohesive story. And I think that might have had something to do with it, because they did market like crazy that people knew that this wasn't don't worry, this isn't a Burton Batman. And I think they may have actively also been trying to avoid similarities with Michael Keaton because they don't want people to think of Batman Returns.
Yeah. Well, that makes total sense. Like,
there was the reference to Batman 89 when Bruce told Dick that he's like, oh, your parents, you don't know what it's like. Your parents weren't killed by maniacs. Like, yes, they were. It's like, that's a direct Batman 89 reference, but there's no Batman Returns reference.
Well, and also no, there's a reference because Chase Meridian says, what is it? It's like, I haven't had the best luck with women. Maybe you haven't found the right one yet, or am I not your type? Should I be wearing skin tight vinyl and holding a whip? So there is a reference to Catwoman. And
that's interesting that they would do that, considering they're trying to veer away from that image, given that I think the overt sexuality in Batman Returns was the thing on the docket of all the things that was criticized. I think that was highest on the list.
Well, and I think maybe not necessarily the overt sexuality of Batman Returns, but more of the BDSM aspects of it, because this is, again, I think that Nicole Kidman is an incredibly sexy woman in this movie, but it's much more traditional. Like, it is the doctor being attracted to the bad boy in Batman and being rescued by the good man that is Bruce Wayne, even though they're one and the same.
Even in the scenes in Batman Returns when Selena Kyle is dating Bruce Wayne, I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer's gorgeous as well, but they kept her kind of a bit more low key because they're trying to still demonstrate that she's really uneasy as Selena Kyle, and that she's just like how Batman is the real personality for Bruce Wayne. They're emphasizing that no, Catwoman is the real Selena Kyle now. That's why she looks much more in her element as Catwoman than she does as Selena. Whereas, like you said, Nicole Kidman, it's much more traditional sexy, the camera angles and the lighting and all of that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, they could have done that, and it sexified the hell out of the non-Catwoman version of Selena Kyle with Michelle Pfeiffer playing her if they wanted to, but they didn't, and that was deliberate. Whereas this time, you're right, they did do that. So yeah, that is kind of surprising that they were referring to, because Skin Tighten vinyl. That clearly that's in a whip. That's clearly a BDSM reference.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, but and then just going back to like after watching Batman and Batman Returns, even it being an absolutely hyper realistic, like it's not of this world, and it is gothic and everything that sort of elevated reality. I think that's what I mean. Is this? It's grounded in their performances. Like the performances from the first two movies are, you believe the characters to a certain extent. This one is, here are your guest stars and here is your Batman, and this is just sit back and enjoy. Even with the credits at the beginning with like the Val Kilmer, Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah, it's sort of also in the spirit of selling toys. Not only do you have the Batmobile, but you have the Batplane and the Batboat, but which serve no purpose, because unlike in Batman '89 where you had the Batmobile and the Batplane, the Batplane served a purpose. He used it to stop the Joker from killing everybody with the gas bombs. It served its purpose. In this movie, it's like, well, we have to take two vehicles because there's two of us and it doesn't seat two, but the boat blows up almost immediately riding towards the lighthouse thing, and then the Batplane also gets blown up almost immediately. And yeah, the mini sub is written to save Robin for the instance, but it's like, okay, you're introducing these vehicles, but not actually using them because you just want to sell more toys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's actually something that Christopher Nolan told them when he was first talked about as somebody that they were interested. He's like, if I'm doing this, we're not doing this to sell toys. And he was originally not going to have the Batmobile in there. And that's where, that was the one final straw from Warner Bros. They're like, or not the final straw. That was the one thing that they pushed back on, was that you have to have a Batmobile, otherwise, because that's part of who Batman is. And even the comics guys are like, yeah, you do. Mm-hmm. But they're like, no, we're not selling toys, and that's why your franchise went to hell in a handbasket. Whereas this one, like you said, everything feels like guest stars, and lights, camera, action, lots of action, other vehicles, toys. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there were a lot of great collectibles of this movie at the time.
That would be
cool to own for sure. Even though I'm not crazy about the movie, but that was. And like I said, like you said it yourself, Schumacher, I mean, lest we forget that Burton chose Schumacher to be a producer on this movie, probably because of his resume with movies like The Lost Boys. It's like, ooh, this is going to be a great pairing. And plus, I think maybe by then Burton sort of got the criticism that, these two movies he made, you even said yourself, one's a pop culture event, the other you think is a better movie, but they didn't like your better movie because it was more of a Tim Burton movie than a Batman movie. So we hired somebody who knew Batman and was a fan of Batman, who actually shared some of Burton's more gothic type of sensibilities, and that I think would have made it even better. But that's why I wonder if it was the studio that kind of intervened afterwards and fucked everything up, because again, Schumacher's resume, these are the only two, this movie, his two Batman movies are the two standouts. Like, what the fuck happened, compared to everything else he did before and after. So I do think this is much more a result of studio meddling. And I think Mark Bernard from Fat Man Beyond was definitely onto something when he's like, no, there's another 50 minutes, not 15, but 50 minutes worth of source material that this movie was going to be in a different order of the edit and all that kind of thing. So I'm not gonna join the jumping on the Schumacher hate train like a lot of people do.
No, and there was a time that I did. There was a time, and again, as I mentioned, like I give away Batman Forever or I use Batman and Robin as a coaster. But now I'm actually looking forward to Batman and Robin because I think it's going to be more coherent in its structure than this was.
It is.
And so I can't wait to watch it again. And maybe I'm an idiot, but no, I definitely am. But like, I am looking forward to it. I want to see it and I'm not going to shit on it. But even like, what was it? Ice Cube, I think? Ice Cube tweeted out that it was like, release the Schumacher cut. And now with Schumacher passing and Val Kilmer being in ailing health, maybe it's time for a Batman for Renaissance.
Yeah, and then Kilmer or one of the others showed up at the DC Fandom event a couple of years ago, and people were thinking, ooh, maybe that's going to lead to something like, the Schumacher cut. And the fact that they were talking about it more, thought that, I know that, I'm not sure if DC would ever think about that because, in the last couple of years, they were doing the Batman '89 comic book series, which is a direct sequel to Batman '89 and Batman Returns. And they specified that as they keep writing it, they're going to completely ignore the events of Forever and Robin, that it's that those two movies are a different continuity from what they're writing.
Well, question, and we are getting to the chat. I promise we're going to get to the chat. It's just getting longer and longer, but we're going to get there. Because Joel Schumacher has passed away, do you think that it would be appropriate for Tim Burton to sort of go in and reconstruct?
It would be a nice fitting tribute to Schumacher to finish what was Schumacher's original movie, especially since it was most likely more in line with what Burton had in mind. I mean, not exactly what Burton wanted, but I don't know if he would be interested in doing that either. No, and also if Warner Brothers, go groveling back to Tim, because after all, I'm not sure what the thinking was. Okay, I get why they fired him, but the fact that they brought him back as producer rather than just going full stop reboot, with somebody else, because they also kept his choice of Schumacher as producer by promoting him to the director's chair. And maybe that was Schumacher's edict saying, no, you bring Tim back here right now, even though they clearly were not allowed to present the movie that they wanted to make. Mm-hmm. So, and depending on how much that footage consists of and whether it would be worth it, it's really hard when it comes to big franchise movies like this. Like if it's a one and done non-franchise artsy film, yeah, you can have a million different cuts of it, no problem. But to take some studio IP that's been around for decades and just, it'd be like, everybody saying, the fanboys over at the Star Wars fan base saying, just let retcon the sequel trilogy, pretend it didn't happen. It's like, how problematic that's going to be for all the people who grew up loving that, and I mean, yeah, George Lucas tampered with the special editions and look what happened there, in terms of the disdain. So, it creates a mess. So I don't think they would. Ultimately, I don't think they would do it. But I think that the fact that the Batman '89 comic book, which I wish they would have come up with another name for it, because it's not a comic book about Batman '89. It's a sequel to Batman Returns. It brings back Billy D. Williams' Two-Face, and it does that story that they wanted to tell. I haven't read it yet because I was waiting for them to finish publishing it to put out like an omnibus. Because the last issue was published January 2022. Maybe the omnibus is already out. I don't know. So like the whole well, it's not an omnibus. It would be like 6 months worth of stories. So I haven't read it. So I would like to read it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Me too. And especially, well, I'd have to see the art style just to see if it's faithful. But even with the comic book adaptations of both '89 and Returns, really, really fantastic.
I believe Tom Jr. Jackson, friend of the channel, actually has that book. So if he's watching, he can maybe chime in the comments and tell us.
Well, speaking of the comments, we should probably get there. But the only thing, and remember they did the Donner cut for Superman 2?
That's right.
So, and I know that was more of a cry like from the fans as opposed to anything else. And then, of course, we have the Snyder cut, which with all of the trappings there too. But I think that this would be a different beast altogether, more akin to Superman 2.
Yeah, maybe, because I know Warner Brothers regrets doing the Snyder cut because that gave fans false hope that somehow Snyder was going to come back, and then you had them all review bombing and boycotting the other DC movies simply because it's not Snyder, and you had the dumb idea the other day that fans were bugging Zack, saying, Zack, you should sell your DCEU properties to Netflix and make them that way. It's like, he doesn't own them. It's like, what are you talking about? So, I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to be kind of like the David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. That's what I was asking for.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I can't remember what brought it up, but he spoke about that recently, and he said it was a very different type of movie, much more coherent and not the kind of mess that it was. So the kind of, like we all know that Jared Leto never saw that movie because he's like, I did so much stuff for it, and my friends are telling me I'm only in it for like 5 minutes. Like they threw away everything because it's funny. The marketing of that movie made it sound like the Suicide Squad's going after the Joker, and apparently that was the plot that were largely part of the plot that Ayer had, and then they kind of threw that out and turned it into that. So I mean, given DC screwing those things up, whereas they didn't screw up the Donner cut, it would have to, I think, be a much larger outcry as well, because at least the Schumacher cut stuff is only recent. And I don't know if they would give, especially now that James Gunn's running DC, I don't know if that would be in his priority box. I mean,
I don't. With James Gunn, I would have a little bit more hope towards a Schumacher cut, simply because of the trauma background that Gunn has. Like that would be something that would be sort of kitschy and quirky that he might be able to get behind. And I don't even know how much it would cost to recut a movie and release it. So it's just an interesting thought if they ever do release it, I'll check it out. I would absolutely. I would revisit Batman Forever, the Schumacher cut or the Schumacher edition or whatever you wanted to call it.
For sure.
Absolutely. Anyway, to the chat polls. Bunyan Snipe says Ace Ventura would not be made now. And Tom Jr. Jackson says, I was reading about that just the other day. Did you hear about that, Kat?
What about it?
I don't know the details of it, but apparently Ace Ventura is horribly offensive now.
Again, I only saw that first movie, like it's not an exaggeration to say it's probably not been since the 90s since I've seen the first one. And
Right.
The second one was just I just thought it was horrible. So I wouldn't know, but probably not.
It's been ages and ages since I've seen them both, but yeah, I did see a brief article saying Ace Ventura is canceled. So whatever. Bunyan Snipe says, and the McDonald's promoted infanticide. No, that was Burger King. When McDonald's pulled their Happy Meals, they went to Burger King.
But again, Penguin's the villain. He's supposed to be evil. What's the big deal?
Well,
plus he doesn't actually get to do that because Batman saves the
day. Yeah.
What's the problem? I mean, I don't get it. It's like,
bad guy does bad thing. Batman stops bad guy. That's the movie.
Let me put this way for people who keep calling that infanticide. Let's imagine for a second that the Joker succeed. His plan was going to be killing all of these adults in Gotham at the parade, meaning all their children and their babies at home in their cribs are going to starve to death and die because all their parents are going to be lying dead in the street. How about that?
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, there's a lot of murder or attempted. Tom Jr. Jackson says, I remember those frosted glasses for Batman Forever. Oh, dude, yeah. Absolutely. I remember they had little coffee cups, and I had the Two-Face one. I always wanted the rest of them. Actually, I wanted the action figure of Two-Face, and it came with the two-sided coin, but I never got it. Bunyan Snipe says, did Bob Kane take credit for the party scene too? Yes, because the party scene was written by Bill Finger.
Yes.
Bunyan Snipe says, the big thing with Tim Burton was that Tim doesn't do camp. Then he makes Mars Attacks?
Well, Mars Attacks one, it's based on a comic or a trading card set, and it is in itself it's designed to be camp because unlike Batman, he's not taking, because the Batman comics had already taken a turn for something darker and trying to move for something more mature with Frank Miller and stuff like that, and to go back to the 60s era level of camp factor, whereas Mars Attacks was always that. So it's kind of Mars Attacks is faithful. And I'm surprised that movie failed. And people are like, oh, it must be because there's already a big alien movie with Independence Day earlier in the year. I'm like, so what? There's a billion rom-coms released every year and they make money, I love Mars Attacks. I think that's a great movie.
I remember seeing it and I thought it was like, I was somewhat disappointed because I saw it in the theater and I was somewhat disappointed. But as I've revisited it, it gets better and better every time I watch it, just because
funny.
Well, I didn't expect it to be such a, I don't know, cynical movie, or
nearly everybody dies.
Pretty much. And well, yeah, like don't they end up at the end and just like everything's been destroyed anyway? But yeah.
Well, they go to Lucas Haas hosts a speech at Congress, or what's left of it, saying they should all live in teepees instead, and then Tom Jones or Jim Brown goes back to his busted up apartment, and then Tom Jones goes to Lake Tahoe with all the birds landing around him, butterflies flying around, and starts singing. It's silly, but it's like that's kind of what Mars Attacks is. They're silly 50s, classic in this vein of those types of comic books, like Weird Tales, Astounding Stories. We're getting off topic.
Yeah, no, totally. But it's a Tim Burton movie, so it counts. But also, I think that it is a situation where Tim Burton was a fan of the Mars Attacks trading cards, whereas like that's more of his sensibility of that sort of weird design and everything like that. So I don't know. I gotta rewatch Mars Attacks. I do.
That would be fun.
Bunyan Snipe says it's a shame Clint Eastwood didn't get to play Two-Face in the 66 series. I heard that was something that they were attempting. Whether or not it would have happened, I don't know.
I can't remember. Did Two-Face ever show up in the series?
No.
No, he didn't. Okay.
No, and they did recently, because there was Batman Return of the Caped Crusaders, which has as we mentioned last week, with the voice of Adam West, Burt Ward, and Julie Newmar, and then they made a sequel, Batman versus Two-Face, with Shatner doing the voice of Two-Face.
I
That
thought
was
it was
always.
nice. I do know that they let Billy D. Williams play Two-Face in the Lego Batman movie.
Yes, that's true. That is true. Who was the Riddler in that? Wasn't it Conan O'Brien?
I think so, yeah.
Cool. Bunyan Snipe, first appearance of Nicole Kidman that made him enjoy her performance. Dead Calm with Billy Zane, Sam Neill. Jill says, I was 9 watching Batman Returns. I did not cry. I rewatched it a dozen times, and she loved your recap of it a couple of weeks ago, Kat.
Thank you, Joe. It was great having you on that show, by the way.
It was awesome. Bunyan Snipe says, how does Two-Face know Batman is in the audience? How many people live in Gotham? 5 million? How many in the audience? 500? So 1 in 10,000 people. That's your guess. Well,
that's a good point, because the circus wasn't being televised. I mean, the beginning of it was when they talked about the donors coming in, but actually, no, it was being televised. That's right, because Edward was watching it at home on the TV. But yeah, because realistically, if Batman wasn't in the audience, there's no way Batman would be able to get there within 2 minutes time. So maybe that was just Two-Face, doing that joke thing again, where he's like, he wants to kill people. He probably would have done it anyway.
Well, he basically says it's the top 1% of, and I don't even know if he says 1% because that's a relatively new classification of wealth. He says this is all the well-to-do upper crust of Gotham. One of you people must know, with your influence and power, must know who Batman is. Hell, one of you pasty face idiots may actually be Batman. And that's when he sets the bomb. So, I don't know, shot in the dark, I suppose. Jill says, the animated series is my main reference point. From that, Two-Face should seem rational, but be inwardly insane in his obsession with allowing a coin to run his life. For sure.
Well, yeah, because as the way Paul Dini explained it is that, after everything, it's because in the comics, it's not just that, he got hit with acid and now he's crazy. And that was just kind of like the final nail in the coffin. And he's divorcing himself from his responsibility because he's just basically bitter and wants revenge. Kind of like in, The Dark Knight, that Two-Face version is very accurate. But he's trying to divorce himself of his personal responsibility because of the coin, even though he's the one who decides that the coin means that. So it's still definitely his fault, but he's just trying to ignore that. He's not really bipolar in the way that they hinted at in this movie or whatever. Like, because frequently in the movie, he keeps talking about, he was referring to himself as we. Like, this is filled with the same type of acid that turned us into the villains you see today, and stuff like that. And you had Chase Meridian finishing Bruce's sentences about Two-Face's psyche and things like that. But yeah, so that's true, Jill. That is kind of the animated series version of Two-Face is the more comics accurate version.
Absolutely, yeah. And Jill goes on to say, it took until the finale of the movie to remember Harvey and Bruce used to be friends.
See, I would have loved them pushing that too. That would have been a great dichotomy for Edward and Harvey, because the fact that Edward is obsessed with Bruce Wayne even before he knows he's Batman, but to find out that Harvey and Bruce were actually friends, he would be envious of that in a way, because he's been idolizing Bruce from afar for this whole time. But you, Harvey, you and him were like this, like that would be envy there. That's they could have done something with that.
Yeah, the motivation for the Riddler and Two-Face to actually team up is, hi, you're a bad guy. Can you be muscle for me? Okay. Like, it doesn't, I feel bad for Tommy Lee Jones in this movie. He did not have a fun time playing it. And I've always had this adage that it doesn't matter what your job is. Everybody wants to call in sick to work some days, no matter how cool, no matter what you're getting paid, no matter what it is. And watching this movie, I'm just like, Tommy Lee Jones is doing such a good job, but he wants to call in sick every day.
Yeah, I remember he was promoting another movie around 2008 or whatever, and people asked him, what are your thoughts on Aaron Eckhart playing, Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight? And he's like, I thought they killed that character. That's how removed he was from the Batman universe. And he's like, well, and they're asking, the stupid question that reporters ask all the time, do you give your blessing type crap? And he's like, yeah, sure. Like, he's not really like, okay, whatever,
I do not care.
Yeah.
Bunyan Snipe says, yeah, he's not playing Two-Face at all in the movie. And if you haven't seen it, I would definitely like I think it's the first season, 2-part episode in the animated series where they really get in. Obviously, it's a 2-part episode for Two-Face. But Richard Mall, who was Bull on Night Court, does an incredible job. I think the first episode with Poison Ivy is Harvey Dent and Poison Ivy going out on a date, and then she poisons him. And then Batman has to catch poison. It's if you haven't seen the animated series, I'm still saving up my my 2-sided coins to pick that up because I do want to revisit that one as well. I've got my Mask of the Phantasm in the mail though. Jill says, and the fun in Two-Face is that they tell you from what 2 decisions he is making, but here he just flips whenever, whatever. Well, yeah. Yes. A lot of it is kill or not kill.
Yeah, that's basically it. And to be fair, that's the same thing in The Dark Knight each time he flips the coin, but at least there, story-wise, it makes a bit more sense.
Well, at least even when he flips flips the coin in The Dark Knight, if he doesn't explicitly say what he's flipping the coin for, it's pretty much inferred what he's flipping the coin for.
Yeah.
So, Jill says they did a better job with the Riddler. I heard he was supposed to be paired with a Scarecrow, which would have matched the psychiatry theme better. I didn't hear that, and I was thumbing through. I actually did research, Kat, and I knew that Batman Triumphant was a thing that they were going to do after Batman and Robin. And that was more inferred to be, and I thought it was like Jeff Goldblum they were trying to get.
No, they were going to take Coolio, who appears in Batman and Robin. And they were going to retcon it, or not a retcon, they were going to say that his character is actually Jonathan Crane, which makes no sense because that guy's like leading some outdoor rave as a musician or something like biker gang or something in that movie. And they were going to say, oh no, he's Scarecrow. Because that shows how innate the Warner Brothers executives were at the time. It's like people complain about Tim Burton not understanding Batman. No, the studio executives had no idea what Batman is. It's like, oh, we'll just take Coolio and make him Scarecrow for the hell of it. And, oh, we'll just take Tommy Lee Jones because he's good at. Oh, we'll do it, and we'll make him this non-Two-Face character. Oh, Jim Carrey's hot right now. We'll just put Jim Carrey. They're thinking they weren't really thinking about logically about it. But once Batman and Robin tanked, Batman Triumphant just got thrown out the window.
Oh yeah.
Even though Scarecrow make a comeback in the Dark Knight trilogy.
In the trilogy, absolutely.
Yeah, in the very next Batman movie, but that's true that probably would have worked.
Bunyan Snipe says, but then somehow the trick he pulls throwing the handful of coins somehow worked, even though the coin was obviously not that important.
Well, yeah, because like you say, it's not important because he keeps flipping the coin over and over until he gets the kill shot, and then he even he's just said, no more puzzles, no more riddles, just die, and just dead. And it's only at that one moment that the Harvey Dent aspect of him comes through, and that's why the Harvey Dent guy decides to flip the coin.
Well, and also we had to end the movie, so it's nice to have a mitt full of coins to throw at a guy. Jill says, I found the romance in 1989 to be more believable than this one. Hell, I agree. Bunyan Snipes agree. I even think the Selena Kyle romance works better, and that sort of duality.
Yeah, they're
romance, metaphorically speaking.
You sounded a lot like Jim Carrey right there. That was great.
You're welcome. Nemesis of Eden says, hail, Scotty, Catherine, and chat. Hope you're doing amazing tonight. Oh, Nemesis of Eden, it is so good to see you. Thank you so much. That was from about an hour ago. I hope you're still here. And if you're not, I hope you catch us on the rerun. I apologize. We try and stay on task with the recap just so we don't lose anything. In terms of the flow of the plot. But, and I appreciate all the people in the chat, all the lurkers, all the people who watch us on the rerun. Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience. Jill says, yeah, right. He looks 23 at the youngest. I'm assuming Chris O'Donnell.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. I thought he looked even older than that. I thought he looked at least like 25, 26, but no, he's 25.
He was, yeah.
That's probably the first time I've actually thought about the notion that he was supposed to be a teenager. That's never occurred to me watching this movie. It's like that's why I kept thought like, why is Gordon saying he got to talk? I'm like, oh,
Yeah, it is.
but even
Yeah.
then, it's not Bruce's problem. And I know Bruce donated money there, but
Well, and I think one of the problems that I've always sort of had with, like, I think that Robin should be, 15, 14 years old. But, like, oh, well, I guess if you got someone who was like Tom Holland, who looked, how old is Tom Holland? Like 22?
26.
And he looks 26 and he looks 18.
Yeah.
Like, and he has for the last however long it's been. So if you could get someone like, ooh, who'd be a good Robin? Elliot Page.
Maybe.
They look perpetually 18.
I
remember.
I'm not a fan of Elliot. I mean, I've never really been. I mean, there was a time when everybody was crazy about Elliot Page for a while. Like,
Yeah.
Juno, Inception. I just never really. I mean, I wasn't that impressed. Not that not that he was bad, but I mean, I just it didn't really move the needle for me. So maybe.
Well, and the funny thing is that when I first saw them previously, and in Juno, and then in Inception, did you ever see James Gunn's Super with Rainn Wilson?
No.
Superhero movie, no superpowers, but Rainn Wilson is a vigilante with a hammer, and he basically just beats people on the head with, like, criminals with a hammer. And so Elliot Page in a former life is infatuated with Rainn Wilson's character, becomes Rainn Wilson's sidekick, and becomes rather sexually attracted to Rainn Wilson. And that was the moment where I was like, no, you are not an object of adoration when it comes to femininity. And so when the whole progress of Elliot's life went forth, it's like, I kind of get it. So Antiderivative Jill says the helicopter that flew through the sign at the beginning of the movie had to have a force field. Yes. I did actually really appreciate the fact that after going through the red eye billboard sign and it crashes into the Statue of Liberty of Gotham.
Yeah.
The Statue of Liberty of Gotham is half a face now?
Yeah. That's another thing that threw me. I'm like, wait, isn't this Gotham? Why is the Statue of Liberty there? And it says Gotham on it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But there's also, I forgot to mention, there is a Metropolis reference in this film.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. So I thought, maybe that was going to be a crossover at some point.
Well, and up until this point, I think this is the first time that there had actually been any sort of even remote taste or hint that there was a shared universe. Like, I think it was after Batman Forever that people were like, oh, is there going to be a Batman or a Superman movie now? Are Superman and Batman going to team up? And this is when those dominoes started falling. Tom Jr. Jackson says, it's just another day of beer and pizza for Scotty R37, as Two-Face would say. Absolutely. And it is.
That's right. That's what he says as a security guard.
Yes. Another day of wine and roses, or in your case, beer and pizza. Bunyan Snipe says, Jim Carrey and Frank Gorshin's stand-up acts were similar, too. Did you ever see Frank Gorshin's original?
I did not.
Neither did I. Like, in terms of I knew he was a stand-up comic. I caught him, what is it? Was it Hollywood Hookers or something? He was in a movie and he plays like a pimp and Carrie Fisher is like an undercover Vice Squad. Maybe it was called Hollywood Vice. I forget. Anyway. No, I only know from The Riddler and from later B movies that he was in when he was just trying to make rent. Bunyan Snipe says Dick Grayson is the lead in Titans. And I still just haven't seen it.
Yeah, okay, I haven't seen it either. So so he is in live action. I don't know if they show his origin story and stuff there. At least as far as I know, this is the only time it's definitely the only time it's been in live action in a movie. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's if that's where it starts in Titans or if he's already or Night. Well, Batman's not in that series, so maybe it's like a Nightwing thing. Again, I don't know. I should start that series. Heard interesting things about it.
Well, and again, Steve said he really likes it. He's enjoyed it so far. Jill says Akiva Goldsman strikes again. He rewrote the script, so that explains a lot. Bunyan Snipe says Goldman is the worst. Yes. Bunyan Snipe says, I believe toyetic was coined for Hot Wheels in the 1960s. Possibly. Maybe it wasn't coined by Joel Schumacher, but it was certainly employed by him. Jill says, I like the Batman Returns Batmobile better than this one. I agree with you. Bunyan Snipe agrees with you. I love the Burton Batmobile. Jill says, no, there are some good ideas in it, Scotty. It's okay. Are we talking about Batman and Robin?
Maybe.
I don't know, Jill. I'll take your word for it. Anti-derivative Jill says, the Riddler has won this movie because the dialogue drained my brain. It was a live-action cartoon. 5 out of 10. Yeah, absolutely. And I missed the normal Bat theme music.
Yeah, they had hints of it, and they got, the new music, and it's like, that's something else. It's like, okay, you had the Batman theme, which is one of the best things. As much as people malign Batman Returns, it's like the theme in the beginning, especially, was fantastic. And it's like, you didn't bring back that classic theme. It's like, I mean, I do like part of it, like the like that's different from the Elfman thing, but I still would have liked them to incorporate in some way. But
yeah, oh, I agree. Well, and they don't bring back this theme when they're referencing it in modern Batman. Like when they do use the classic Batman theme, they go directly to Elfman. So, Black Philip Alvarez is in the house. Hey, Phil. Hello, boys and girls. Happy birthday again, Scotty. Thank you so much. I appreciate the wishes from one and all. Jill says, I was 9, so when I saw Catwoman in Batman Returns, I didn't know it was BDSM. I would hope not. Just thought it was cool, but apparently Michelle could not breathe in that suit for long. No, not at all.
Yeah, I would imagine. I can't remember how old I was when I first saw that movie, but I was familiar with the iconography of the characters when I was young, and that went over my head as well. I mean, I understood the idea that, I understood the concept of sex and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't pick up on that stuff.
Like, the only thing that was really overtly sexual as far as I was concerned was when Catwoman beats up kicks Batman down. He falls on his back. She straddles him and then licks his bottom lip or his lips. And I was like, that's hot. But that was the only thing that I really took in terms of, and I just thought that Penguin was being creepy. Like, there was no.
Well, yeah, like when he puts the button on the supporter, and then when he to cop a feel kind of thing, and then when he's talking to Catwoman and trying to, after they kill the Ice Princess, and he's trying to woo her kind of thing, and then he gives up.
Phil says, let me just say, I think Kilmer does the best portrayal of Bruce Wayne, and the villains here are just too silly, but on purpose. I like the visuals and what Schumacher did to differentiate from Burton's.
I agree that the villains are silly for the most part. Even though I think they had something there going with the Riddler for a little bit. I don't, again, you already know, I don't agree on Kilmer as Bruce Wayne. The visuals and Schumacher, yeah, it is, I guess it's nice that he differentiated it. It's surprised that they differentiated it as much as he did, because again, it seems like the studio interfered in the edit as opposed to on set, because Schumacher, again, was hired by Burton initially because of his resume. Maybe he just wanted to show a different side of Gotham, to change it up a bit, to make it fresher, so it's not the same thing each time. Kind of like how Nolan went from Chicago to New York and Pittsburgh for his Batman trilogy, and even between 89 and Returns, like 89 was all sets and stuff, but then Returns added a bit more of an Art Deco type feel to some of the buildings and storefronts to make it a little flair, change it up a little bit,
And I don't know, for me, Keaton is my Bruce Wayne and Batman. This one, it's tough to say because I don't know. I don't know if I can separate and decide whether or not I like Kilmer's Batman better than his Bruce Wayne. I think Bob Kane said, not that that matters because he only made one doodle and everybody else created everything around him, but he said that he liked Val Kilmer the best that he had seen. But I always like Clooney's Bruce Wayne, but not as Batman. So,
yeah, I really, we'll get into that next week, but
yeah.
But yeah, I kind of agree with that assessment.
Phil says, "Hey Jill, how are you doing tonight?" Oh my.
Oh, we could.
Yeah, no, I know. I started.
Yeah, very well. Yeah.
Hi. Jill says, okay, yes, very well, thank you. Excellent. Salutations and greetings. Anyway, here we go. Phil is back in the chat with, I respect how Schumacher took full responsibility how the movie ended up. I always believed fans were way too harsh on him. Great director, in my opinion. Rest in peace.
Agreed. I just don't. I think it is kind of the professional move for him to take full responsibility for it, even though I think it's more the studio's fault than it was his.
But I think the apologies that Schumacher made were much more for Batman and Robin than they were for Batman Forever.
Yeah, that might be true.
Because I know that's the one thing that I do remember from when I got the DVDs back in the day, and I watched it because I heard that there was a flat out apology from Joel Schumacher, and I was like, "That's right, you apologized to me, Joel." And so, yeah. Black. Now I've given, I've loosened up in my old age. Black Phillip says, "I love Mars Attack. Such a fun movie. I can't wait to see it. Like again." And Bunyan Snipes also a big fan. And
now,
yeah,
that had to be the movie with arguably the most celebrity cameos, like since Mad World in '63. Just everybody who's everybody is in that movie, not just comedians. I mean, they got everybody for Mars Attacks.
Yeah, Mars Attacks is a stocked, and even with like people who weren't famous at the time, like Jack Black is in that movie. So yeah. And that's before, and I think his biggest credit up until then was the Neverending Story 3. So, but Mad World, but then also don't forget A Bridge Too Far. That is a stacked cast as well.
I think that was also a bit too long. That was I saw that for the first time last year or the year before. I just falling asleep.
Well, yeah, it is long. It is 1970s recreation of World War II, and also spoilers, unsuccessful. So you pretty much keep going and going and going and going until they say, "Oh well, no dice." So Bunyan Snipe says Clint Eastwood not signed on to play him, but the character was considered too dark, which makes sense.
Like Two-Face too dark for 66?
Yeah.
Well, I can totally picture them having done a cartoonish version of him, kind of like they did here with Two-Face,
Yeah.
Then again, I have a hard time picturing Clint Eastwood playing that role.
Well, his voice would have been good for it, but and what I read that because Rick Baker took over from Stan Winston in terms of the makeup effects, and he wanted to have, with Tommy Lee Jones, he wanted to have like the exposed teeth and the bulging eye and everything like that, and the studio was like, "Nope."
You see, they did that with the Two-Face in the Dark Knight, but they did it CGI. I would have liked it to see what it looked like if they'd actually gotten, Rick Baker, pulled him out of retirement, had him do it live action.
I still really like the look of. Oh
yeah, it was still really good. I just meant that it was really sad to read that. The reason that Rick Baker retired was he's like, yeah, all the work is dried up because people just want to CG everything, which is unfortunate because I still think the work that Rob Bottin did on The Thing trumps almost every creature feature made for the last 30 years. Or 40 years. It was remarkably effective,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, and I think you're in the right place if you want to be a fan of practical effects. So Phil says Clint Eastwood as Two-Face. I can see that, especially in the time period. Yeah, but he was still like in 1966. Wasn't he too popular to be doing that?
Yeah, that's the year he made Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah, that's the third one in the trilogy. So I don't know if they would have got him if he did sign. Bunyan, if he signs, then I stand corrected. Phil says Harvey even says in the movie that he was a good friend, so that's nothing new. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, yeah, we knew.
And
Yeah, we know that from the comics and stuff. It'd be cool to play that up more.
yes, yeah. Well, and that's part of the reason why The Dark Knight is so good is because you actually get to see him pre Two-Face, post Two-Face.
Yeah.
Phil says Jones felt Carey overshadowed his performance and was too over the top. Yeah. Oh no. Well, yes, and I think that there were times.
I mean, I think Jones was definitely. He had more. Tommy Lee Jones definitely had more screen time as Two-Face than Jim Carrey did as full-blown Riddler. But Two-Face was. I mean, I get Jim Carrey. That's probably because Jim Carrey was such a hot item at the time that people were more focused on him just because it's Jim Carrey. Whereas, I mean, Tommy Lee Jones, he's played weirdo characters like that before, like in Under Siege, where he's disguised as like the nutty punk rocker type guy going nuts before he becomes serious later in the movie. But it's like, I mean, yeah, I guess he could probably feel that way, but to say that it's over the top, it's like, really, and yours isn't. It's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that it was just a situation that, well, I don't know. I know that Tommy Lee Jones did not enjoy. And so
Yeah, I'm surprised he signed on for it. I wouldn't think of him for doing that type of role. I mean, maybe, but then again, actors always live in fear of being typecast, so maybe he did it to avoid that. I don't know.
Well, and not only that, but he had already worked with Schumacher in The Client. So
Yeah.
maybe there was some professional respect that was wasted. Bunyan Snipe says Howard Stern was up for Scarecrow at the time too, wasn't he? Well, yeah. And again, this is sort of the era of the guest star as opposed to the qualified actor.
Yeah.
Phil says Robin Williams was supposed to play the Riddler, or the studio wanted him.
I heard that I know that he expressed interest in playing the Joker in The Dark Knight before he knew what it was going to be. And even Dwight Yoakam, of all people, also expressed interest. I only heard about Robin Williams for Joker. I didn't hear about them wanting him for this.
I heard that they had offered it to Robin Williams to try and lure in Jack Nicholson. So there was some sort of a bidding war. Like there was we're showing interest in Robin Williams because they were trying to make Jack Nicholson do it. And so Robin Williams found out and he got pretty upset about it. And then they lured him back and it was like, you can be, and when it was Burton, it was like, you can be the Riddler. But then when Burton dropped out, they just said, no, we're not using Robin Williams anymore. And I think that there was a quote from an interview saying, I've been screwed by Batman twice. And so it wasn't necessarily something that he looks upon fondly. Phil says, I thought Stern once said he was in the running for Batman, but who knows when it comes to Stern. True. Bunyan Snipe says, shut up, crime, which is the tagline from Super. If you haven't seen it and you're a James Gunn fan, check it out. It is dark, but it's good. It starts off as being goofy and funny, but shit goes down. And Phil agrees with me. Oh my God, Kat, you need to see Super like ASAP. I think you would appreciate it. Phil gave it 7 bat nipples, which is dope. And then Phil continues, none of the first 5 Batman movies are above an 8 for me. I think I put the first Batman. No, I put Batman Returns at an 8. And then Phil says, I say that Kilmer was the one time Bruce Wayne actually questioned himself about wanting to continue to be Batman, especially after falling for Chase Meridian. I think it was more about his relationship with Robin that did it, that like pushed him over the edge, about seeing that it was a listless quest for revenge and who was he even avenging anymore. He even says in the movie, I've saved 1,000 strangers and I've never even seen their faces. And so, yeah, I don't know if it was the love of Chase Meridian, but it was definitely a a culmination
If
of
it
all the
was, they
factors in
kind
the
of
documentary that was Batman Forever.
yeah. If it was, they kind of dropped the ball on that because he went on a couple dates with her. It's like, oh, okay, I'm like, yeah, I do buy. I remember when he says that line that you just mentioned there, but it seemed to something that might have had more to do with Robin, but it still felt really abrupt in the movie. Because it's like with Spider, like again, I always go back to that reference for Spider-Man 2. They spend a lot of time, like the first 40 minutes, 45 minutes of the movie or whatever, emphasizing all the reasons why being Spider-Man is just not good for Peter Parker. Whereas Bruce, it's like, okay, you've known Robin for what, like a few days, and you've known Chase Meridian for what, like 3 dates, and you're already changing this major life decision. It's like, okay, you know, that like, yeah, but then again, Buddy Holly met his wife on the same day he got engaged to her, so.
Really?
Yeah,
That's kind of adorable. Oh, welcome the lovely Cherie. Thank you for being here.
Oh.
And we have hellos back and forth between Jill and Cherie and Phil and Cherie. But that will take us to the end of the chat. Next week, same bat time, same bat channel. We're going to be talking about perhaps a redemptive arc in the world of Batman and Robin, because I'm really curious to revisit. And I'm going to be watching it on Blu-ray for the first time when that arrives. And that will be Clooney and Schwarzenegger. I'm going to have to dig out like old interviews and stuff, because I just adore how George Clooney says, oh yeah, the Batman franchise, me and Schwarzenegger, we killed that for about 10 years. So I'm looking forward to the disparaging review, and we'll see if it does anything for me that is positive, or if I just still revile it in the same way that I have always. Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, in recent years when I've seen it, I think it's one of the best unintentional comedies of all time, but I don't know if that's a compliment.
We will see. Kat, what do you got going on the internet?
I've got the Unifying Force show on the Virtual Cantina Network every second and fourth Sunday of the month, streaming 8 a.m. Pacific on Facebook and the Virtual Cantina Network YouTube channel. I've got this going on. I'm at Slice Night on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And if I'm invited back, I am on the Positive Fandom channel. I've been covering The Bad Batch Season 2.
Excellent.
With RM.
Fantastic. And they let me play here on the Fantasmagorium show. I'm here on Wednesdays with you talking about current season. We're talking about Batman. And then on Thursdays, Anti-Derivative Jill and myself talk about the classic Quantum Leap until February, at which point I will be able to torture Jill, because we're going to be talking about season 3 of Star Trek Picard, otherwise known as Star Trek Patrick Stewart. And that is going to make me very happy and her very upset. So, before we go, I just wanted to say that I never got a chance to thank you, Kat.
And you'll never have to.